Good evening. I am Andy Lewidis, Director of Development for Young Judea, and I'm thrilled to welcome you all to the official launch of Maayan. In Hebrew, Maayan means a natural spring of water. In Jewish life, water is a powerful metaphor for sustenance and continuity. Since Young Judea's independence from Hadassah in 2012, it is all of you who have sustained Young Judea, making it possible for us to continue fulfilling our sacred mission of connecting Jewish youth to their Jewish identity, to Zionist ideals, and to the pursuit of social justice. You have enabled us to continue cultivating the next generation of Jewish leaders. We are here tonight to express our gratitude and to celebrate this extraordinary circle of donors. I would like to invite Mike Berman, our dedicated YJG board chair, to offer some words of greeting. Mike?
Thank you very much, and thank you all for joining us this evening. Fortunately, I'm in the US right now, so I don't have to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning in order to join this group. When we envisioned Maayan, the vision was to create a vehicle for us to be able to stay connected with our most important supporters who have dedicated their time and their treasure to Young Judea. We want to make sure that all former board members, current board members, and major donors have a very easy and seamless way of connecting with what we are doing. And we are looking forward to many events with this group and have this group grow over the years. The objective is to have full engagement, feedback, input from this group as Young Judea grows and as we expand our activity. So we are looking forward to the people who are on the call today and those who couldn't make it being with us on this journey. And of course, we're now finally getting under the process of bringing on many more new board members. And we've got a number of board members who've rotated off the board after 3 or 6 years of service. And this will be the vehicle for having them stay engaged and involved with everything that we're doing. This year was an extraordinary year. If you'd asked me in April of 2020 what I thought the year was going to bring as the pandemic was starting, you would have sensed fear in my voice. And instead, it has turned into a year of positive transformation for Young Judea. Despite the fact that our camps were all closed last year, the donations that we received from parents and from supporters to all of our camps was just phenomenal. We qualified for PPP funding for all the camps, and we are now opening again as we speak in a position stronger than we've ever been. Year course was a record number of year course attendees in the year that just finished up, and despite all the hardships from COVID and conflict, I think we delivered a phenomenal year of transformation once again for over 200 kids on year course. And we are looking forward to continuing to grow and expand with the input and support of this group. So thank you all very much for joining us, and I'll turn it back to Andy.
Thank you, Mike. You may all think of yourselves as donors to Young Judea. I'd like to suggest we broaden our vocabulary and begin to embrace the term philanthropists. Philanthropy literally means love of humanity. A philanthropist is one who supports causes that promote the welfare of human beings. Jewish philanthropy means both Jewish people supporting the well-being of individuals, families, and communities, and it also means supporting the well-being of the Jewish people. In both senses, you are philanthropists. Your generosity to Young Judea helps ensure the development of educated and inspired young leaders who will live their Jewish lives with pride and who will deploy their Jewish wisdom and values to build a world of justice and love for all in Israel and around the world. For this launch of Maayan, we are most fortunate to have as our guest speakers 2 Jewish leaders who have revolutionized the world of Jewish philanthropy. Barry Feinstein is president and CEO of the Jim Joseph Foundation. The foundation supports Jewish education for youth, teens, and young adults in the US, with more than $490 million granted in its first 11 years of operation. Prior to the Jim Joseph Foundation, Barry was executive director of the Lisa and John Pritzker Family Fund. In 2010, he became CEO of the JCC of San Francisco, where he oversaw dramatic growth and built it into the second largest JCC in the country. Earlier in his career, He served as executive director of the two-campus Isaac M. Wise Temple, transforming its information technology systems and earning the Harris K. and Alice F. Weston Award for Outstanding Leadership. Barry's first job out of college was as a summer camp director in Wisconsin for Young Judea. A Scottish native with 25 years of experience in the Jewish nonprofit world, Barry holds a degree in community education from Jordan Hill College in Glasgow, Scotland. He and his wife, Ellen, have 3 children. Felicia Herman became president of Natan in 2021 after serving for 16 years as executive director. Since April 2020, she has been director of the Align Grant Program of the Jewish Community Response and Impact Fund. She's also managing editor of Sapir, a new journal of Jewish ideas, which launched in spring 2021. Felicia is chair of the advisory board of the Shomer Collective, which Natan launched in late 2020, and is the founder of Amplifier, now Amplifier JFNA, a network of giving circles inspired by Jewish values that Natan launched in 2014. She is president of the board of the American Jewish Historical Society and also serves on the boards of Safaria and the Dream Street Theatre Company, a performing arts company for adults with developmental disabilities. She's a proud recipient of the Jewish Funders Network J.J. Greenberg Memorial Award. Felicia holds a PhD and MA in American Jewish History from Brandeis University and a BA from Wellesley College. She lives in Brooklyn with her husband and their 3 children. Barry and Felicia, it's also important for me to share with this esteemed group how pivotal a role you both played in securing the funding through JCRIF for Year Course. While this last year was certainly unusual and challenging, these funds enabled us to offer a powerful and meaningful experience for 225 emerging leaders whose year will have shaped them for a lifetime. Let's jump into our conversation about Jewish philanthropy. I'm going to start with you, Felicia, and ask you this question. What's the relationship between foundation giving and individual giving? When and why is it important for foundations to see individuals investing in the same projects for which they have been asked for funding?
Thanks, Andy. And I'm surprised you left out the most relevant part of our bios here. Both Barry and I had sons on your course this year. So we
Oh, that was coming at the end, but yeah. I'm glad you mentioned it.
So
I wouldn't forget.
I mean, and Barry, you know, and I think his family, like lifetime Young Judeans, for us it was new, and my son just had an absolutely transformative year. So we are incredibly grateful. Everything I did for Young Judea this year was totally self-serving. No, of course it wasn't, but it was beautiful. It was like just a beautiful experience of being able to help facilitate stuff and then see, you know, this end user on the ground really benefiting from all of it. So thank you really to all of you for that. And thanks for having us. You know, it's funny, you mentioned in my bio that I have been involved with Natan, which is a giving circle for many years. A giving circle is just a group of people who come together and pool their charitable resources and then decide together how to give the money away. So in a way, it's like the board of a foundation, but it's just sort of regular people. You know, you don't have to be especially wealthy. Most giving circles are pretty small in terms of the dollars they allocate. So I basically spent my whole career with individuals who are banding together to give as a foundation, but they're just regular people. I mean, my husband and I were members too. And I think that the interplay between individual giving and foundation giving is just incredibly important. For sure, foundations look to see with any organization that they're supporting. I mean, no foundation wants to fund the whole thing. Everybody's looking to see, like, are the people for who this is benefiting, are they actually investing in it as well? What a foundation can do, usually because it has outsized resources, you know, compared to individual givers, it can catalyze new things, start new programs, provide some maybe long-term support, sort of the, you know, the background of stuff, but the day-to-day work of an organization, I think, is really sort of most sustainably supported by the people who really believe in it the most as individuals. And I really believe in the power of individual giving, of collective giving, and of not letting the sort of big name fancy philanthropists, you know, and foundations sort of take up too much of our airspace, because they really are a small piece of the overall philanthropic pie. Most of the giving in America, most Jewish giving is done by individuals. So it's important for us to remember that we're all of us, and actually Jewish tradition obligates all of us to give, no matter who you are, even if you are also the recipient of tzedakah, you're supposed to be giving tzedakah.
Thank you, Felicia. It's an inspiring answer. Barry, would you like to add to that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I well, first of all, thank you for the invitation, and to Andy and to Adina, and also just my own personal thanks. You know, wherever I am today, whatever I'm doing, is all down to a group of Hadassah women who saw something in me at the age of 23 that I would never have seen myself. I'm on record as saying, knowing what I know now, I would never have hired myself. But they took a chance on me, and I'm forever grateful for that. And it's nice to see some faces and some names from way back when, you know, and that's a tribute, and actually related directly to what Felicia talked about. You know, there are people on this call who have been involved in Young Judea from the time when I was there, you know, 25, 30 years ago, and longer than that. And that actually does speak to a real power, because foundations and philanthropists tend, you know, major names tend to come and go from scenes, but the engine, if you will, are all of you. And that is not a line that is meant to make people feel good. That's just a factual statement. And then the only other thing I just wanted to add, because I know there's other things, is just to double down on what Felicia said. You know, in general in the world, we're attracted to all the big names, right? You know, that's the way kind of the world is situated right now. It doesn't matter what you're in, you're attracted to Apple, we're attracted to Google, we're attracted to big names. And the same is true in the philanthropic world, that foundations like the one that I'm privileged and honored to be the president and CEO of, we tend to attract an awful lot of heat. But when you actually take a step back, you know, about one plus or minus about $1 in every $5 comes from the major quote unquote foundations. And the engine that actually sustains the North American Jewish community are all of you, right? It's all the $18 gifts and the $1,000 gifts and the $5,000 gifts and the 10 and so on. And I think that's something that we have to be very aware of and make sure that continues, or else that engine will actually not be as strong as it need be. And so this is a moment of actually trying to take away the heat from the large foundations, and be working, you know, much more collaboratively with that. And I'll finish by saying, you know, the work that Felicia has been doing for, you know, the better part of her career, you know, you know, that was really, you know, instrumental work for a number of organizations to build that engine from the ground up.
Thank you, Barry. And I think it really does speak to this point that every single person has a role to play and can make an impact. This question's for you, Barry, out of the gate. How has Jewish philanthropy been impacted by the pandemic? Are there emergency measures that were relevant during the height of the crisis that will now be put to rest? Or are there now new models that will be carried forward into the new normal that's emerging? Yeah,
you know, so obviously philanthropy has been impacted by the pandemic, and you know, I mean, Felicia and I have done this several times over the last few months, and so, you know, the answers are, you know, kind of getting honed a little bit, you know, more. But, you know, I would say, first of all, the big change on the major foundation side of things has been the switch from coordination to deep collaboration. And by that, I mean, we used to coordinate before. You know, we'd talk about a grantee and we'd say, well, what are you thinking and whatever. And then we would fundamentally go off and kind of make Shabbos for ourselves, right? So we kind of had an awareness of what was happening, but not like a, and you know, in the pandemic, there's been a realization across the philanthropic world, and I also want to say across the grantee world as well. And I think that's an important point, which is that actually collaboration has been taken to a new level. And when one collaborates with somebody else, it requires a certain amount of compromise,
Mhm.
Right? It's almost like a marriage, if you will, right? If you're single, you decide when you want to go to the movies, what restaurant you want to eat at, and etc. And when you get married or you go out with 5 or 6 people, you have to kind of say, well, do you want Mexican, you want Chinese, blah, blah, blah. So the level of coordination, I'll just say, requires an act of selflessness. It requires you to be willing to give up a piece of what yourself is that says, you know what, I really wanted Chinese food, but you know, the group wants Mexican, let's go for Mexican, you know? And that's something that I hope, I don't hope, it will stay. I think Felicia and I are on a mission, and others, to make it stay. And then I would also just say that the other thing that I think has come out of the pandemic, which it speaks very much to the work of Young Judaea, frankly, is it wasn't just a response to emergencies. It was also an understanding that like Churchill said at the Alta Conference, out of every crisis comes an opportunity, right? And so there are multiple opportunities that presented themselves, and gap year programs in Israel were one of them, right? That there was a moment in time in June where we said, holy crap, maybe we can get more and more kids to Israel, et cetera, et cetera. And as recently as 2 hours ago, Felicia and I were on a call with a group of other people trying to figure out how can we try and normalize that. You know, we've set your course has set a new benchmark. Other programs have grown. So success will actually be not that 220 kids went on your course in 2021. What does it look like in 2022, in 2023, et cetera? And I think that notion of collaborating on possible opportunities is something that is going to stay with us, over a long period of time.
Thanks, Barry. And I think that for all of us sitting here today, can feel that way because we've been the beneficiaries of that collaboration. So we are grateful for that too. Felicia, is there anything you would like to add to the answer to this question?
And only just to repeat what I said about individual givers again. Sorry for the noise in the background. I'm thinking of, the camp system is another sector that obviously you are all involved with as well. And I remember, what is this? Are we in June? I guess it was already, a few months before this, a year ago, the biggest sort of heartbreak was that camp wasn't going to open, and it really looked like the camp system was just going to be eradicated. And it was a combination of, yes, philanthropy from the big foundations, but then I think the number was that the Foundation for Jewish Camps shared with me, like over 15,000 people around the country giving to their own camps, like their beloved institutions, that they couldn't countenance the idea that something bad would happen to them just because they couldn't open this year. And we gave back our tuition, as a donation or a deposit or whatever it was. So just to repeat this, that the individual donations, I love, Barry, what you said. I haven't heard you say that before, about it being the engine of Jewish communal life. It's 100% true.
Thank you. And I think that Barry did touch on this, the answer to the following question that I'm going to direct to you, Felicia. And that is the balancing the need. And I think we're talking more about how people look at this and, feel like the choices that they need to make, are they the right choices? Balancing the need for providing material support to Jews in need, such as, relieving hunger and providing housing, with the need to fund efforts that educate and inspire and engage Jewish people, and especially the next generation, in Jewish values and the promise of a robust Jewish future. So for us, we sit here, we know what the impact is, and of course, we are very grateful for the funding. Do you think that there is still sort of this, conflict as to, should we be supporting the needs of people, material needs, versus what seems to be something that it wouldn't fit into that category?
Yeah, so I'll say two things about it, and I'm making myself a note on the second one because I'm guaranteed already to forget the second one. The first is that I really believe in givers self-actualizing. So there's really nothing bad, that we could be giving to. And what I am really interested in is having people give generously, give regularly, and give in ways that mean the most to them. Obviously, that also help whoever it is that you're trying to give to. But the way that we can best sort of walk as, good citizens in the world is to find the things that really speak to our soul and to give to those things. And the good news is that if we have an abundance mindset, meaning that there's just more and more people out there, more and more dollars out there to be activated. And we're not like scarcity. It's not like, oh, if I do this, I can't do that. And if this foundation goes to that thing, then it's like a tragedy. We have an abundance mindset. We have so many people who aren't giving anything, or who aren't giving what they could be giving. Like the more things we can highlight as important in the world, the more money we'll be able to generate for all these good causes. And the second thing that I wanted to say is, one of my teachers is Rabbi Yitz Greenberg, who's really one of the most important Jewish theologians of our time. And he was one of the people in the federation system in the late 1960s who challenged the federation system to shift from funding only social services to more funding for Jewish education and engagement. And when he got the pushback of like, how could you argue that the Federation should take its money and support a day school, instead of a nursing home, he said, we need to be educating people to care about the nursing home later. Like if we don't have Jewish education, if we don't have Jewish engagement, we won't have people who will care about all of these other causes down the road. That's part of the beauty of like the treasure of what Jewish wisdom has to offer all of these people. So we need to do it all.
Thank you. And I do like the sort of scarcity and abundance sort of imagery. There's a lot to be said for that. Barry, what are you most excited about or concerned about in the Israel engagement space right now?
So just before I get there, just 10 seconds on that last question.
Yes, please go ahead.
Which is just, Felicia, of course, said it beautifully, right? I mean, the one thing that we know is, there is no scarcity of resources, right? So, so it's not an either or proposition, but it does speak to the notion of collaboration and coordination, right? And understanding what the left hand and the right hand are doing, right? And so there are, the Jim Joseph Foundation has a mandate very clearly laid out by our benefactor who passed away. So there are certain things we can and cannot do. And that just means that we, but people knowing that, being public about that, and I think that's my long way of saying, I think it's okay for people to be public about their philanthropy in that in that regard. Not about look at me, look what I did, but about these are the things that I'm interested in, and it might encourage others, and it might also point people to gaps that you're not doing. So I'll just say that. It's a great question. All right, it's a hard question. What are you excited about, and what are you concerned about? Because there was a lot of concerns and a lot of excitement a few months ago, and there are even more concerns certainly, in the last few weeks. I'll just say, what I'm most excited about is that for the first time in a number of years, there are a number of concerted efforts in the, particularly in the immersive Israel travel space, of getting as many young people to Israel as possible, right? And that is that laid fallow for quite some time, apart from Birthright Israel. And so, when I had the privilege of working at National Young Judea, we were taking thousands of kids to Israel on a 6-week summer program. Okay. And, we can, we're not going to dive into what happened since then and why, right? There's lots of factors, but in the last couple of years, in addition to Birthright, there are programs that are gaining traction, like Onward Israel. There's a new program, Route One, that is underway that is getting 1,000, that has long waiting list to get kids back in teenagers, to Israel in large numbers. There are all sorts of post-college experiences that are on the horizon. That makes me excited, including this refocus on gap years, right? Which is, in my opinion, a no-brainer from an educational standpoint, right? And look, what's concerning is, you know, is the discourse and narrative around Israel. And I want to be clear here that the reason I mention that is it's not a political statement, right? If we want to have a political conversation, we can have that, right?
Mhm.
But it's actually about something that I have been concerned about for the last few years, which is that Israel is fast becoming your favorite item on the menu at your favorite restaurant that you can't actually eat, right? So if you just stay with me for 30 seconds, you go to your favorite restaurant and you love the salmon, and you ask for the salmon, and the waiter says it didn't show up today. So you come back the next night, you say, I'd like the salmon. And the waiter says, you know what, it looked bad today. And then you come back the next night and the waiter says, we don't have any left, you know, whatever, right? There's always an excuse. So Israel is sadly becoming this item on the menu of Jewish life that less and less people want to talk about. And that is, I don't know what's bigger than a flag, like a banner. That it's not a red flag, it's a red banner. It's a red massive quilt. Because forgetting about where you are and right, left, up, down, whatever, if you just don't talk about it, then forget about it. And, you know, I think I would say I'm concerned we've done a poor job about educating our leaders. We've done a poor job about, you know, making it part of the discourse. So we've become polarized. And I'm deeply concerned about that. Leadership programs and things like Young Judea have roles to play in that. And there also needs to be a larger, wider community initiative around it, or else Israel will fast become another country in the world for too many American Jews and diasporic Jews, and that's going to be problematic.
And to that point, I do want to say how our movement does have a responsibility and a role to play. And for that reason, in the last few months, we've gathered our alumni for various conversations around Israel to make sure that these conversations are happening. And then, of course, with our kids, we are making sure that they're happening as well. So I really appreciate you saying that. Felicia, for you, what is exciting and concerning?
There's a lot that's concerning. The last couple of months or whatever it's been have been very, very worrisome. I guess it also always reminds me that every action has a reaction. So we saw some terrible things happening, and in the Jewish communal leadership world, every conversation is about this. So the reaction is, wow, we have a serious problem. Or even Andy, what you just said, like we're gathering our alumni to do this. So it's not as if we have no tools in our arsenal. We have a lot of tools. We just need to really activate them, and probably, as Barry was saying, coordinate them and do more of them. But it's very clear that we have some real challenges ahead of us. The action reaction point also is just that change isn't linear. So I'll quote Rabbi Greenberg again, because so much of the way I think is shaped by him. He talks about the perfection of the world, like we are going inexorably toward the perfection of the world. It's just not a straight line. So bad things happen. You know, we're all humans. We have free will. Bad humans do terrible things, and natural disasters happen. But that doesn't mean that we're not moving forward. And we move forward by dealing with this adversity, like not giving up, basically, by saying, okay, this is a problem. We need all hands on deck. We have to fix this. And that kind of like cycle, constantly working on things, constantly, you know, our job is not to finish the work, but neither are we free to desist from it. That kind of mentality. And this is the perfect group to really be thinking about how to double down, how to use the tremendous assets that you have in the kids and the alumni and the educators, really to just expand their reach even further. I was just saying before this, my son, who just got back from your course, got into his first argument with a friend last night about Israel. And it's really fascinating. Like, this is the beginning of his, you know, figuring out how he's going to own his responsibility and his privilege to tell people the truth and you know, and to really stand up for what he cares about. So we have a lot of assets that we need to work on.
We certainly do. And I know it was a hard question, but both of you spun it from a very hopeful place. And I think that that is really important for all of us on this call. So for our last question, we'll start with you, Felicia, and that is, where do you see the winds blowing in the coming year post-pandemic? I mean, this year we were the beneficiaries of there being a lot of funder energy around gap year programs, and it was wonderful for us, and it set us on an incredible path. What do you think is next? Where do you think the pulse is?
It's hard for me not to just project my own experience on this, but I feel like thanks to the work that Barry and some of the other foundations created in creating the Jewish Community Response and Impact Fund, which we really haven't talked about that much. We keep talking about J-Curve. It's been an extraordinary collaborative effort of foundations over the last, whatever it is, 16 months. And it's really given me at least a perch of like seeing a lot of the landscape of what's happening out in the Jewish communal world. We funded a lot of different things and different sectors. I think there's more collaboration than ever, more of a sense of how precious these communal institutions are than ever, more of a roll up your sleeves, you know, like I have a responsibility to do something about this than ever. And I'll plagiarize something that somebody said. I was actually at my first in-person retreat over the past couple of days. And somebody said at the end of it that their takeaway from this whole pandemic period was just how proud they are to be a Jew. Like to see funders and teachers and camp counselors and all of these programs and organizations and people really caring for each other and understanding that we have a responsibility to care for each other, not just organizationally, but even personally. How are we taking care of each other? I think something shifted in people's heads for the good. You know, I mean, you hear we're both optimists, me and Barry, because like that's what philanthropy I think is about. Is like, oh my gosh, there's so many problems. How do I fix them? But that's a big source of optimism for me. Is just a sense of connectedness and care that I feel sort of across the Jewish communal world. So I hope it sticks.
Thank you. And Barry, would you want to add on to where you think the winds are blowing this year? You're on mute.
Yeah.
No
I had one of the people that reports to me ask me the other day if they can just scrap their salary and get $1 for every time they say, "Hey Barry, you're on mute," because they would be making out much better. So I thought it was a great line. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a couple of just quick things I would add to that, and I completely concur with everything that Felicia said. I think there's you know, one of the key lessons for me during COVID, and I touched on it a little bit when we talked about you know, what's concerning us. You know, the reality is that Israel education and the way that we deliver it hasn't changed dramatically over the last number of years, right? And it should have. You know, technology you know, we've known for years how far behind the Jewish world was in adopting technologies. And then COVID came and we realized, oh my God, like you know, like we just all scrambled, right? You know, right. And so, you know, I was saying earlier on another call that Felicia and I were on, I'd like to think, and I think I am beginning to see it, a little bit of a wave of, let's move from a reactive place to a proactive place. Let's stop trying to solve problems, which, by the way, the Jewish people are amazing at, right? That's what we, you know, we are incredible at it. We are ultimate problem solvers. Birthright Israel is a great example. Young North American Jews aren't going to Israel. Okay, so we came up with a program that, you know, sent them there. And I'm interested in actually forecasting before reacting. Can we see around corners? Can we be, you know, I'm sure I'm talking to many people on this call many women and men who have had major success in business and in other areas. And I would suggest that the reason why most of you were successful was because you were able to see around a corner. You were able to actually get, you know, to use the, you know, here's a Scottish massive soccer fan using a North American ice hockey reference, right? You know, Wayne Gretzky, you know, he wasn't the greatest, wasn't the fastest, wasn't the most skillful. He could just skate where the puck was going to be. That was his magic. And that's really the challenge that I think maybe the pandemic has placed for us. Can we skate where the puck's going to be? And that's hard because that requires selflessness. It requires you putting things into place for the future that you might not be around the table to witness. It requires compromise. But, you know, we spend no time thinking about tomorrow really deeply in the Jewish community. I mean, we may think about tomorrow, but we don't think about 5 years and 10 years and 15 years. And I know that if we did that, we would probably be building a better community down the line. And I think that we have the ability to do that. And then I also do share Felicia's hope, you know, and then I will also finish by saying, because whenever I have the privilege to talk to a large group of lay people, this has been brutal on everybody, and it has been massively brutal on your professionals. No matter what they say, when they say they're doing fine, trust me, they're not. And you are the lever, right, to give them some permission to decompress. It will be really important for that to happen. It's like deep sea diving is what I said earlier on. You can't go straight back up to gasp for air because you'll die. You have to take intervals in between. And for all the Young Judea professionals and all the camp directors and all the people in Israel, they can't keep running. And all the school teachers and all the, you know, everybody, you can't keep sprinting. You just can't. And what will happen is people will burn out and people will leave. So I just have on behalf of Adina and Andy and all the team and whatever, you know, find small ways to take care of them, which I'm sure you do. Find bigger ways to take care of them. Ease the pressure. You know, the next 6-9 months in particular, I think the rush to get back to normal is upon all of us. But people just need a little bit of a breath. And trying to figure out how to do that, I encourage you to do. Thanks for the time.
Well, Barry, thank you for saying that. And I think I speak on behalf of all of us that are in a professional role at Young Judea, that we are incredibly fortunate to have the lay leadership that we do. The most unbelievable support. And we saw it during this last year where things were not easy. And as we slowly, you know, creeping out of this, they're behind us all the way. And you're right, it helps us and it motivates us every day. Thank you both for sharing your wisdom, your passion with us, both as parents of year courses. I was going to get that in, both as parents of year courses and leaders in the world of Jewish philanthropy. Your partnership with Young Judea has been so enriching on so many levels. So thank you. And I hope that you'll remain on the call for the last 5 minutes that we have so that you can see what Young Judea is actually doing. And that leads me to ask this question. So as we emerge from this pandemic, you know, what does Young Judea look like now? And I'm going to ask our CEO, Adina Friedman, to share a Young Judea update.
Thank you so much, Andy. I want to actually start by thanking Barry and Felicia for their really thoughtful and inspiring remarks. Many takeaways from your remarks. In particular, I will take with me the importance of foundations working collaboratively with individual supporters. I think everyone on this call believes that and has seen it in action this year. Certainly, it is what has helped Young Judea thrive in the midst of this crisis and will help us move forward into our future. And also the idea that individual donations are in fact the engine of Jewish life. And that is very much the case as we see. And the reason why we're gathering this fantastic group of supporters all together. And I'm proud to share, Barry, just to your closing remarks, that we are actually proudly, because we, in fact, not only do we feel what you shared about the collective burnout and the need for a collective breath and opportunity to renovate and reflect. We have taken a decision as professionals and also with the support of our leadership, our board, that we're going to be taking a mini sabbatical, a little Shemitah at the beginning of September. We're going to be closing our office to non-urgent matters between Yom Kippur and Simchat Torah. And we're really grateful for that recognition and that support from all of our leaders, and hope that we can be a model to other organizations. I know there are many that are considering doing similar things. So each of you individually and the foundations that you represent have offered immense support for Young Judea in this most unusual year. And we're so deeply grateful. We're grateful that you have joined us for this short, brief gathering. And we're so grateful that you have stuck with us all of these years. Barry, I think it was you who said, or Felicia, you said, it is important to give generously, to give regularly, and to give to the causes that you care most deeply about. And this group of individuals who are on the call, this group of supporters, this group of Chavrei Young Judea are actually represent exactly that. And you have been exemplars of that. And we're so incredibly appreciative. So I want to very quickly share with you an update of what's been going on and what we're most excited about. This is certainly, it doesn't come down to the numbers, but this does tell a story in this most unusual and very historic year that we've had as Young Judea. Despite all of the challenges and everything else, we are opening our summer camps. I think 3 of our 7 camps have opened in the last week. And the faces, the smiles, the joy that I see in the pictures on Instagram and on Facebook, it's just really, it is eliciting both smiles and tears all around. We have 2,300 campers that are going to be joining our camps, including my own children, which I'm very excited about. As you mentioned, we had 225 year coursers in this last historic year course year, and we are looking forward to between 170, 180, and growing by the day. Actually, we continue to have enrollment this summer for this coming year, and really, really thrilling that we're going to be able to make that opportunity available to our young adults. We are in fact part of Route One, the initiative that you mentioned, Barry, of teens going to Israel this summer. We're so grateful for the Marcus Foundation and the Jewish Education Project for making that possible. And we have over 80 teens that are going to be heading to Israel in July. I will personally greet them. I'm looking forward to going to Israel in July and seeing them in action and meeting our Israeli team in person. And we have a number of other programs that we're excited about. We have young adults that are heading to Israel for internships. We have a number of groups that are there this summer, actually, also in internship programs and travel programs, including Onward Israel and others. And we have we've had very active year-round programs despite our having to move to virtual programming, and are looking forward this coming year to a number of really exciting, both in the area of, we're gonna have our continued alternative winter break program. We're gonna have a new leadership seminar that we're going to run this program for our teens. And we're going to have a number of opportunities for reinforcing that Israel education, the nuanced and critical Israel conversation that you mentioned, Barry, which we have proudly modeled for many years. And we're going to continue to do that even as we adapt our own approach, because in fact, it needs to be refreshed all of the time based on what's happening in the world and around us. And what has been really thrilling for me in these last 7 months as I've stepped into this new role is meeting many of you and other alumni through our alumni programming that we have launched. There's such an energy. Andy and I just started to hit the road, and last week we're in Boston, and then Andy was in Chicago, and we look forward to meeting many of you and others in person and really hearing your own individual Young Judea stories of how you became connected with Young Judea, with the inspiration and the impact that it had on your life, and the dreams and aspirations that you see for Young Judea in the future. Together, we are in fact searing lifelong connections with Judaism and Israel and inspiring the next generation of young activists. We are in fact a movement for the moment, keeping our core values while adapting to the changing times. So it is my pleasure now, as I conclude this very brief update, to introduce our next speaker, Abigail Silver Greenberg. Abigail is just returned from year course, fresh from year course. I know her parents who are on the call are also very proud and excited to hear from her. She's going to share some reflections, and she and Allegra, who you're going to hear from shortly, are actually in Tel Yehuda. They're part of the staff at Sevet this year, and they're going to be welcoming campers next week. So Abigail, thank you so much for joining us. On to you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. A special hello to my parents, Steve and Jennifer. Nice to see you both. Yeah, so I was on your course for the 2020-21 cycle. I was on Kedma, the section that started in Jerusalem, and studied with the Machon, the program that we were partnered with, and then moved on to Tel Aviv, where we did internships and volunteering. And I'm really excited to talk to you about it. When Andy was prepping me for this call, she asked me to think of like some kind of specific emblematic memory that could sort of transport you a little bit into my year course experience. And she said she was sure that I would already have a good one in mind. And yeah, there were some things that came to mind. And against all odds, I was able to have some of the sort of capital G gap year classic experiences that produce those kinds of memories. You know, I camped on the beach during Lag BaOmer with a bunch of my friends from your course, led by one of the scouts who was with us through Garina Teed. I went to the Kotel at 3 a.m. and prayed there. I stood on an overpass and watched the traffic stop on Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day. And I learned so much throughout all of this, and I think like had a very positive programmatic experience. And I think it's really cool that I was able to have those sort of like classic Israel adventure moments while I was on your course this year. But what popped into my head when Andy prompted me were memories that were a little less expected. I thought about arguing about politics with my Israeli taxi drivers in sort of broken Hebrewish, talking both about the Israeli elections and the American ones, always coming out of the taxi thinking that I had convinced them, to which my fellow passenger said, no, you didn't. He was not convinced at all, but it's still very fruitful and really interesting. I thought about doing yoga on the roof of a hostel where I stayed when an unexpected lockdown halted our movement between the two semesters. And doing that with my peers, being led by someone who was, you know, a skilled yogi. I thought about blowing out the candles on my 19th birthday cake from a quarantine apartment and still managing to have a really good day, despite it being day 13 of what would prove to be a 16-day quarantine. And I think that's how your course was this year. You know, I am a lifelong young Judean, and your course has been on my radar for a really long time. Both my parents did it, but I wasn't intending to do it until the pandemic hit. And when it became clear that college wasn't going to be all that it's cracked up to be, and it was going to be on Zoom, and I realized, you know, a gap year is definitely the right move. Someone said earlier on the call, it's a no-brainer. It definitely was at that point for me. I chose your course because I felt that it could be relied upon. I saw how smoothly it had run during the 2019-2020 cycle when all the other programs seemed to be bringing their students home. They stayed the course, as they said. And for that reason, I knew that your course was going to run no matter what the pandemic conditions were. And I really wanted a program that would take me to Israel and keep me there safely and securely. And I got exactly that. And I'm really, really thankful to our staff, who shepherded us through 3 cycles of quarantine, 2 national lockdowns, and a little surprise war at the end. I think that their leadership and the security of your course and steadfast commitment to keeping us there created a fertile ground for the big moments and the small ones that took place in the interstitial space. And I think I was really thankful to simply just be in Israel this year and to be safe and cared for and to be vaccinated there before so many of my peers in the States. And most of all, I was really lucky not to be lonely this year. I often said to my friends that I thought we were the only 19-year-olds on the entire planet who weren't lonely this past year. And I think that it was really, really lucky. I think that I felt really lucky to have a cohort of people to experience the joys and complexities of living in Israel with, to celebrate with, argue with, to watch beach sunsets with, and mountain sunrises with. I think that this year that wasn't a given, and that made it extra special, but it would have been really special and worthwhile in any case. And now after a year being on the customer end of this Young Judaea experience, I'm really happy to be here at TY, to be on the giving and programmatic end. I just came from planning some polo for our older campers, to think about how they can get involved in Tikkun Olam, and that felt really fitting. So thank you all.
Thank you. Allegra?
Shalom, everyone. My name's Allegra, and I'm honored to be speaking with you all today and representing the National Maskirut, some of whom are here with me today, and we're calling from Tel Yehuda. I'm Julia.
I'm the National Ofrim Sofrim Programmer.
I'm Sivan. I'm the National Pearsum.
And I'm Allegra. I want to start by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm from Manhattan, and I grew up spending my summers at Camp Sprout Lake. And after 6 years in Burbank, I continued on to Camp Tel Yehuda, where I am now, for all 3 summers. But summer was not enough Young Judea for me. So as a freshman, I was elected Mazkira, or president of my region, and I was reelected the following year. And then in February of 2020, I was elected as the National Mazkira of Young Judea. Being on the National Mazkirut this past year has taught me how to grow from challenges, how to empower my peers, and how to establish confidence in myself and in my leadership abilities. Young Judea really is so special to me. It provides a close-knit community unlike any other, where I'm able to connect with other Jewish teenagers across the country. Young Judea has given me the space to explore my own Jewish identity, and it's instilled a lifelong connection to Israel. So many of the skills that I've learned in Young Judea settings, from thinking critically to facilitating discourse, are invaluable and will translate beyond the movement. So one highlight of my year was spearheading the Judeans for Generations campaign, a teen-led fundraiser to support Young Judea's emergency fund. The fundraiser had a huge social media presence as we kicked off with our Young Judea photo challenge on Instagram and Facebook, which quickly spread the word. The National Mazkirut also held multiple phone-a-thons, calling previous donors and asking for their support. It was really special to me to speak with alumni who shared my passion and love for Young Judea, and within a week we exceeded the $10,000 match and in total raised over $21,000. I felt like I was truly making a difference and giving back to this movement that really has had such a profound impact on me. So I want to thank you all so much for your continued support and for making these opportunities possible for me and so many teens like me. So thank you.
And there you have it. And there you have it. When we listen to these inspiring stories, we know that we are doing the right thing. So thank you, Abigail, and thank you, Allegra. There is no greater return on our investment than the leadership exemplified by both of you. In closing our program tonight, I want to thank those of you who have contributed an annual gift to our 2021 campaign, and encourage those of you who have not yet done so to please consider making your gift before August 31st, when we close out our campaign year. I also want to thank the chairs of our development committee, Betsy Gold and Steve Berman, and the entire committee, Stu Wallach, Greta Rothschild, Shelley Sherman, and Alison Goldberg, for your guidance and partnership. And as we say goodnight, we're delighted to share this montage from this year's year course program. Each of these photos brings to life not just the resilience of our kids and staff to endure a pandemic and even a war, but the joy, awe, and appreciation for what you made possible. The deepening of their love for Israel, their lifelong bonds with each other, and their growing commitment to Jewish leadership.
תתארו לכם עולם יפה, פחות עצוב ממשהו ככה, ואנחנו שם הולכים עם שמש בכיסים ומעל גגות הכוכבים, והזמן עובר בלי פחד, ואני הולך לפגוש אותה בגן העדן. תתארו לכם קצת אושר, כי הוא כל כך נדיר כאן, עיר מגניבה בתוך החושך, ושנינו בשמיכה, והיא מלטפת אותי ואומרת לי מחר יקרה מה שרצית, ועם לאט השתקפויות של עצב ושמחה. תתארו לכם באמצע יום יפה, שמיים עליכם, אהבה איתכם, כן ככה זה קרה, לפתע היא אמרה, אני עוד זוכר אותה, כמו בסערה. תתארו לכם מותי נופל לתוך זרועותיה, לכם בצעב של משורר, אני מכאן אני שייך, וכל חבר שלי כמו פועמת בלבבי, אני מזרח מערבי. כאן זה לב, ואותך אני לא עוזב. אבותינו שורשים, ואנחנו הפרחים המנגינות. שבט אחים ואחיות. כאן זה בית, כאן זה לב, ואותך אני לא עוזב. אבותינו שורשים, ואנחנו הפרחים המנגינות. שבט אחים ואחיות. ואותך אני לא עוזב. אבותינו שורשים, ואנחנו הפרחים המנגינות. שבט אחים ואחיות. שבט אחים ואחיות.
Good night, everybody, and thank you for joining us.